Rick Jensen, News Talk Radio, WDEL, 101.7 FM, 11:50 a.m. On the phone is Scott Angelle. Scott Angelle has been involved in environmental organizations, the government, for so many years as well. Former lieutenant governor in Louisiana as well. Scott, I'm glad to have you on. What other titles do you own? Because your business card can't hold them all. What all else have you done?
Well, look, I was happy to serve as the secretary of the Louisiana Department of Natural Resources, the only person to serve two governors of different parties there, kind of really focused on bipartisan solutions and putting people first. Obviously had an opportunity to serve in D.C. here recently as the director of the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, by its function being the primary regulator of offshore energy, such a vital part of our energy portfolio that's being discounted by this administration and is showing up at every zip code, at every gas pump in America. Is absolutely ridiculous.
So I just wanted people to know who you are, the kind of guy you are, again, working for two different parties. And you're an expert when it comes to the oil industry and drilling, as well as protecting the environment. So we're looking at the pump, and it's breaking our backs. Every time we go to fill up, I'm seeing diesel prices, other parts of the country, like almost $7 a gallon. What are you seeing down there in Louisiana?
Yeah, look, it's terrible. I mean, it's you go to the grocery store, you go just anywhere, hang out at ball games. This is everybody's talking about. The only thing people are really concerned about right now is how they're going to meet their monthly obligations. Inflation is out of control, and inflation is being driven in a large sense by energy prices. We are a mobile economy. We move products every day, and it's showing up in incredible ways. And it's really destroying the spirit of the American family at this point. And, you know, when I last spoke to you, I indicated that there will be folks in America that would soon be having to make a choice between paying for prescription drugs and utility bills. The utility bill comes in once a month. You see the increase at the gas pump every week, but that utility bill started coming in March and April, and people started feeling it. It's going to be an incredibly difficult summer, and it's an unforced error. We got to a spot here, Rick, that we don't need to be there. We're prosecuting our energy policy in foolish ways, and the pain at the pump is unnecessary. And you almost begin to believe whether or not there's a nefarious reason that folks are trying to make this happen, because the solutions are pretty simple.
Let me put you on hold for a second, Scott, because I want you to be able to hear this audio here. And this is Biden's Energy Secretary, Secretary Granholz. It comes right to what you were saying, as many people are wondering, is this on purpose or not?
Obviously, we have the acute issues with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, but looking more holistically in a macro view, how does this speed up the efforts at DOE to move in more of a renewable direction, since this is going to have an impact on people at the pump?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously are all in on making sure that we meet the president's goals of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And, if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you.
If you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you. One more here, sir. Like I said, it's stunning.
What is the Granholm plan to increase oil production in America?
Oh, my God. That is hilarious.
It's not hilarious, though, for, the millions of Americans who are struggling through this. And as out of touch as ever, President Biden celebrated these record high gas prices yesterday, just gushing that the pump pain is part of an incredible transition of the U.S. economy away from fossil fuels. He did that when he was overseas. He said this is indeed part of an incredible transition of the U.S. economy away from fossil fuels. And when I hear this sort of thing, Scott, I'm thinking they're out of touch, and damn, we voted badly. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, these policies are void of reality. Telling someone who is having a very difficult time making a choice between prescription drugs and utility bills that by 2035 and 2050 we're going to be where we need to be is like telling a cancer patient to put a Band-Aid on a tumor. This is just absolutely ridiculous. It's unfair, And it smacks of, again, some nefarious thought process that let's just kind of, say what we need to say. And I got a couple examples I want to share with you.
Yeah.
We obviously we've been following a few things happening in Ukraine. And we got our European friends who are struggling with the fact that 40% of their natural gas comes from Russia. So on March the 25th, the president announced that the United States was going to boost natural gas exports to help wean Europe off of natural gas. That was on March the 25th. 26 days later, on April the 21st, John Kerry, who is the climate envoy, is quoted as saying, we're going to give natural gas a 10-year expiration date. So 26 days after the president makes a promise to our European friends that we're going to help boost natural gas exports to help wean Europe off of natural gas, 26 days later, the number one ranked climate guy in the White House says, no, we're going to go ahead and give natural gas a 10-year expiration date. And then 21 days later after that, on May the 12th, the president cancels offshore lease sales. Now, one of the things we need to understand is that offshore is loaded with natural gas. The Gulf of Mexico is loaded with natural gas. An absolute perfect place to help our European friends put USA energy workers back to work, do it in an environmentally smart way, given the fact that natural gas in the Gulf of Mexico, we only flare and vent about 1.25% of our produced gas there, making it the most attractive place to produce natural gas on the planet. And yet we're making these promises to our European friends that we're going to do all this, and then we read this. You talk about Secretary of Energy. I saw it in November. In November of this year, the president nominated a person to be the comptroller of the currency. Now, the comptroller of the currency runs the most sophisticated banking system in the world. And she was quoted as saying she wanted to bankrupt oil and natural gas companies, coal, oil, and natural gas companies. That's a direct quote from the New York Post. I'm happy to share that link with you after.
Oh, yeah. Well, wait a second, Scott. President Biden said that during the debates.
Well, so then on one hand, you have in November of 21, you have a person saying that we want to, who's again nominated for this high position, we want to bankrupt oil and gas companies. 180 days later, you have the Secretary of Energy now calling on producers to increase production. So 180 days before is we want to bankrupt them. 180 days later, we want them to increase. And so, I don't know what's the right word. It's like maybe the White House thinks of the USA energy workers as a booty call that we just call them when we need them.
Yeah.
I don't really know, Rick, but it's unfair because history tells us, and I want all your listeners in the awesome state of Delaware to hear this. We have had 6 recessions from 1973 to 2019. History is very clear. And each one of those recessions were preceded by a spike in energy prices. So it should not be a surprise to anybody, anywhere in this country, that what we are experiencing right now, the beginning of a recession in this country, is because of failed policies that increase energy prices, that drive this economy into the tank. And it's unfortunate. And asking OPEC, from the environmental side, so what the White House did this year or last year, they called on OPEC to increase production. Okay? While we were saying no here, They were calling on OPEC to increase production. Well, guess what? It's the same planet. It's the same atmosphere. It's global warming, not USA warming. So how will we tell our USA energy workers this? We tell USA energy workers no, and we ask OPEC to give us more. Asking OPEC to give us more is not a solution. It's an insult. It's an insult to the men and women who for generations have put on their hard hats and their steel-toe boots, who kissed their families goodbye and set out to find the energy to fuel this great nation, this great economy. And now we find ourselves where we on our knees, we're begging people that don't agree with our values to give us more when we're telling folks who are part of the American fabric to sit down. Look, American energy workers have rallied before. They want to rally again. American energy workers are happy to help be part of the long-term solution. Unleash the energy worker. Let them go unleash their inspiration, their dedication, their perspiration, and it'll be amazing. This is a self-inflicted wound. It's important that Delaware understand this. This is not Russia that made this happen. This is American policy that's vilified in the industry. And when you kick people hard enough in the rear end, well, maybe they say, well, we need to go to the sidelines. And that's what's happening right now. And it's unfortunate because we had stronger leadership that understood that those six recessions from 1973 to 2019 were in fact caused or preceded by a spike in energy prices. We could unleash some American energy workers, go back to making production here.
And get it done right here. And cleaner and faster. If you just tuned in, it's Scott Angelle, former lieutenant governor in Louisiana, but even more importantly, to this conversation, we're talking about gas prices and energy. Also former director of the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement in Washington, D.C., Louisiana Public Service Commission, as well as Louisiana Secretary of Natural Resources, has been working on this for decades, I guess most of your life here. But let's get an understanding here of what's going on. So we also hear from the Biden administration, it's about price gouging by the oil companies. Is there a way to measure whether or not there's price gouging?
You know, look, every state in the union, I know Louisiana has a pretty strong, complex laws on price gouging. Look, the president obviously doesn't understand what sets the price here. This is the market at work, and it's a supply-demand issue. And when you vilify the supplier in such a way that causes him to say, I don't know if I want to do this anymore because I'm really concerned about the long-term risk. You got the person who you're nominating as comptroller of the currency saying, we want you to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
What about that, Rick? What about that, Rick, is inviting to anybody to go deploy capital when the people you choosing to serve in the government want the very people you calling on to increase production to go bankrupt?
No, I hear you. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a fair enough thumbnail sketch to take a look at profit margins, just the profit margins over the last 10, 15 years? Obviously, no profit margin in 2020. So then you take 2020 and 2021, add them together and divide by 2, and then look at 2022. Is that a fair enough way to estimate whether or not the oil companies have been taking advantage of the American consumer?
No, it's ridiculous. The oil companies are not taking advantage. The market is setting the price. It's a supply-demand function. It always has, and it always will be. And to make my point, why do you believe that the Secretary of Energy recently called for American producers to produce more? Why? Because she knows internally, instinctively, that it's a supply and demand equation. It's exactly what it is. And let's kind of turn to Delaware. You know, Delaware uses about 75 times more energy than it produces. Okay? Mm-hmm. So what Delaware needs, we all have our roles that we play in this great union. What Delaware needs is places like the Gulf of Mexico to be free to produce, to make sure that some of that product can get to them, because their state, your state, has different assets that you use to help the rest.
Well, absolutely, Scott. I mean, for example, if I may, here in Delaware, what we need is more natural gas, or maybe even small nukes when it comes to overall energy. But when it comes to oil, help me understand this. Crude oil prices are about half the price of a gallon of gas, right? Crude oil. And then you have more costs like refining costs. We've got the summer fuel mix coming up. It's going to raise it even more. You got distribution. You got state and local taxes as well. So with all of this, what would be the best way to decrease the oil prices right now?
Well, the number one thing that the president could do right now is stand down the rhetoric and quit using this crisis as some promise that this is going to accelerate our solution to renewables. I happen to believe in renewables. I'm all of the above kind of guy. But the vilification is pushing the capital away, Rick. You just can't continue to do that. So if tomorrow the president would say, we're going to stop vilifying these energy companies, we realize that we need them. We realize that we've had 6 recessions from 73 to 2019, and they've all been preceded by a spike in energy prices. We realize that inflation is at a 48-year high. We realize all those things. We realize that we are in energy transition, but transition of itself means we're going to phase things, and we're going to set a plan out that's not going to go from A to Z overnight. We're going to have a plan here, and just stop the rhetoric, lower the rhetoric, and start selecting people that are not trying to run people out of the energy business, but actually understand that energy is a valuable part.
Oh, no, we know that, Scott. We know that. By the way, if you just tune in, Scott Angelle, he's been working in this energy field in the state of Louisiana, as well as in the federal government, and we're talking about solutions to the pain at the pump. Obviously, that is, I would say, increased supply. So, just start pumping more oil. But right now, if we take a look at this today, how many days, weeks, or months might take for any oil being pumped at this time to actually give us any reprieve at the gas station?
Well, we got to drill more wells.
But how long would it take But Scott, how long would it take to get from the well to the pump in such a way that could lower the prices?
I don't have a direct answer to that question because that's a very complex question. Mm-hmm. In some parts onshore, it's a real quick ability to perhaps increase production. In some areas, offshore a little bit longer. But it's all of the above. We in some places we're maybe talking about having weeks or months. In other places, maybe years. But the bottom line is we got to get the capital deployed. In order to get capital deployed, we have got to make sure that people understand that there is going to be a chance for a fair return on investment. And look, one in particular, Rick, let's talk about this. Offshore responsible for 17% of America's oil production, the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay. We've now canceled. The president canceled two lease sales last month. 2 offshore lease sales last month. All right. If you're an offshore producer right now and you got lease sales that are being canceled, what does that make you feel like? You want to start, investing more capital to get more production to the marketplace? I mean, it's a challenge. It's scary. It's risky. And until we start, I think, sending the right message, we're going to continue to have this problem.
Well, understand, we talked about this before, Scott, and it's not just a pump, too. Everything you touch today, your laptop, your tablet, your phone, the interior of your automobile, everything comes from oil. Petroleum is used in all these things. So it just seems ridiculous to me that you have somebody in politics saying we're going to give an artificial deadline, 2035 or whatever it is, 40, that we're going to be oil-free, because you can't be unless you can have an electric car. But if you want to manufacture the body and the interior, what are you going to do? You're going to weave it out of hemp?
Yeah. So again, it's void of any reality. And when we start to recognize how important it is, we start elevating and celebrating our USA energy workers, put them back to work, unleash their innovation, and go to work for America, right? I mean, take a look at what's happening with our farmers. I mean, on the strength of our farmers in this country, we feed the world.
Yes.
We absolutely feed the world. Yeah. And we value our farmers. And in a sense right now, we need to bring that same kind of love and affection to our energy workers, unleash them, celebrate them, elevate them, and let them go out and do the work that we can do.
I like that, Scott. Yeah. Bring them the love and affection. I love that. All right, we got to bail. Scott Angelle, I really appreciate your time, man. Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement in Washington, D.C., also in Louisiana, Secretary of Natural Resources. And the answer really is we got to drill, but you got to get somebody into the White House to say, hey, it's time to do this, as opposed to destroying this industry. Scott, thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Have a great one.
Okay, you too, Scott Angelle. Your take is always welcome.